your small business is booming and ready to expand, you might say something like,
"It's happening!"
Booyah!
Yeah!
Crushed it.
But if you need someone who can actually help protect your growing business, just say,
like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
And just like that, your State Farm agent can help you get the coverage you need for your new space. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Extra value meals are back. For just $5, get a savory and sweet sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddles, plus hash browns and a coffee. Only at McDonald's.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
All right, welcome in. Second hour of Money Moves. Looking forward to the start of Eagles and Bears as we have a big one in the National Football League. Chicago looking to maintain its spot at the top of the NFC North. Big survivor implications, of course, as well here on this Black Friday, as the Philadelphia Eagles have over 50% of the field on them in regular survivor. And, of course, with Baltimore's loss yesterday, this looms large and grandissimo, too. So big result here. Eagles going to go off as a 7-point favorite total. 42.5 or 43.5, depending, of course, on where you shop. Closing numbers for where we're sitting right now. Circa is going to go off with a 7-point spread with a total of 43.5. The only thing for me here in this game, got a teaser leg on the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll see if they can pull this off. Couple of updates for you here. 6:06 left to go in the fourth quarter. We're keeping track of some college football. Also important, not just for my betting implications, but, of course, with tiebreakers, Utah's still technically alive in the Big 12, but they are getting gouged defensively. Luckily, a defensive touchdown gives them this 10-point lead, but a big play from Jalen Daniels to Henderson, and we are already, for Kansas, marching down the field inside of the 30-yard line of Utah, down by 10. So big explosive play generated once again for Kansas offense, and this team is already in scoring territory, down by double digits. Also keeping an eye on college football, where we're at with this matchup here in the Egg Bowl. This one's becoming a little bit of a snoozer right now as Ole Miss is up 31-19. Mississippi State does get into the end zone. 2-point conversion attempt is failed. So with 10:40 left to go, 31-19, that score there. We've had a lot of quick scores here. This total is probably not in danger, you would think, given how much time is left. But the explosiveness of both of these offenses, specifically Ole Miss's, is going to make you sweat a little bit. In-game total up to 57.5. So if you got this thing under, you're keeping your eye on it because we are still not out of the woods yet. All right, with that, Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles set to take the field. By the way, I mentioned a throw down to the 1-yard line for Iowa. They punched that in, 40-16. The Hawkeyes are up on top with 12 minutes and 12 seconds left to go in that contest. As we're waiting for action to develop here in this NFL contest between the Eagles and the Bears, we should have a couple of things as we're looking at the board overall. It is a Friday after all, and we don't do our market power ratings today. We did them earlier in the week, but we can hit on some news and some of these lines that we're discussing and some of the games that I think are the most interesting to me. By the way, Kansas touchdown. So they are into the end zone, cutting this down to a one-possession game, 24-20, extra point on the way. We'll let you know if it's good and what the update is there. So there's a couple of spots here. We can start with the news from yesterday really quickly. The market is kind of frozen here. Houston and Indianapolis. It looks like we're going to get Daniel Jones. No limitations. We don't really know that. He's going to be out there despite the fibula issue. 3.5 the spread with a total of 44. What it also looks like is that C.J. Stroud will potentially make his return here. Consecutive practices participated in for C.J. Stroud, and he has cleared concussion protocol as of 45 minutes ago. He will start for the Houston Texans. Kind of assumed that this was going to be the case. I mean, he'd been out for the last 3 games. You assume if there was going to be a return from a concussion, this might be the week to actually do it for Houston, coming off of the Thursday night game against Buffalo. So the news is official. C.J. Stroud has cleared concussion protocol. We're going to get him back out there. It's going to be pretty interesting, too, to see. I mean, Davis Mills, as we had talked about in the game leading up to the Buffalo start, he hadn't played terribly in the starts that he had made, and C.J. Stroud and the Texans' offense had played a little bit better. But Davis Mills does deserve credit for the way he had performed in the starts that he got because of the absence here. So we'll see if Stroud can actually maintain for this offense against the Colts defense that, as we have now seen, the corner situation is in much better hands than it was about 3 weeks ago, even with Sauce Gardner, Charvarius Ward, and now, of course, Kenny Moore with the best slot corner, maybe, in the NFL. So this is going to be a pretty big matchup, but would assume we're pretty much going to stay here. Don't know if maybe there's going to be a big push on Indy, considering the practice footage has not looked great. The Colts still refuse to say with specificity whether or not his fibula is going to be a problem. Reports are that it's the fibula, but either way, Daniel Dimes is going to be out there to get that start for the Indianapolis Colts. He will oppose C.J. Stroud. Some of these other matchups, as the Bears are out on the field, first run is second and for 3 yards, so 2nd and 7 coming up for Chicago as we are just underway out there in Philadelphia. But the other matchups that we're going to see here in this NFL week that are going to be pretty fascinating, and a couple of sides that I like, we'll get to best bets coming up a little bit later in the hour. Let's talk a little about some of these matchups that I have discussed here with you guys. New Orleans and Miami, and I wanted to give this a little bit more light because we touched on this a little bit with our market power ratings, and on Fridays, maybe some folks are used to hearing them here. We can kind of have a faux session when it comes to this. New Orleans, I think, is one of the most interesting sides of the week, and that's going to be on Sunday. Miami right now is a 5.5-point favorite, or 5, with a total of 42 or 41.5. And given the movement on this game, I would assume that there is some agreement with me in the betting market as to New Orleans standing. Last week against Atlanta, when we did our market power ratings, and you looked at the number, again, 1.5 being home field, we were told that New Orleans was better than the Atlanta Falcons on a neutral field. They lose the game. Falcons generally control the entire way. And after that, we get the resulting adjustment where New Orleans is now, as you see here, about 4 points worse than a Miami Dolphins team that just 2 weeks ago was power rated almost pretty much equals to the Atlanta Falcons. The whole point here being is that this swing of power rating and where you judge where this team is at, you can't really have these volatile swings. You've got to be a little bit more static with the way that you measure some of these clubs. And the fact that New Orleans has been swinging back and forth with this volatility, I would say that leads me to grabbing some of this with New Orleans. There's sixes out there still with the Saints, but I think the market's getting this wrong. This seems like a very big overreaction to where where New Orleans was last week, the market getting burned by that, and subsequently downgrading this Saints club by quite a bit, when the reality is they're much closer to the middle of what these two games would represent from a power rating standpoint. So do think the Saints live to stay inside of that number, and a big move at that against Miami. I obviously hope that they can pull this upset off because Miami is trending toward getting over this alternate win total that I've got from before the season started. But this is a really interesting contest here. The other two is the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. We're starting to get some more rumbling noise out of Las Vegas about Tom Brady's feelings about this team and what the status of Pete Carroll is going to be as you head into next year. That's what happens when you're a dysfunctional franchise. You're going to maybe have moving parts yet again and have a guy that you just hired last year potentially be on the hot seat, even though you thought that he was the answer to all of your problems. But right now, for Las Vegas, one would assume that we're at the bottom of the barrel right now for the Raiders. Catching 9.5 on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. There's some 10s out there. And again, I think this is very similar to what we just watched with New Orleans. A week ago, the betting market said, not only are you better than a team like Cleveland, you're about 3 points better than the Cleveland Browns. The market bet them up, too, to about 4.5-point favorites at close at multiple shops against Cleveland last week and Shedeur Sanders. And now this week, all of a sudden, we get knocked all the way down to Las Vegas being on the precipice of being the lowest power-rated team in the National Football League after they were just playing and favored by many points over what was deemed last week as the worst team in the National Football League in the Cleveland Browns. I think, again, this is one of those wild swings where the market can't get a read on a team from its power rating, and instead now we're getting this massive adjustment after getting burned, where the reality should be much closer to the middle of the pack of where you were being judged. And I think getting 10 in an NFL game with the Raiders, I understand how bad they've been. Trust me, I've been one of the more vocal guys about this team's failures. I do think that 10 is a bridge too far for the Las Vegas Raiders. So we got some bad teams that we're going to be rooting for this week in the Saints and the Raiders. Quick update. We've got a long drive going for the Chicago Bears. 10:54 left to go and rolling in the first quarter. A second down. Chicago has crossed midfield, and right now this second down is right at about the Philly 37-yard line. So they are moving the ball, Chicago is, on an opening drive. See if they can get some points. We talked about this yesterday. We'll talk about it every time we have some of these live betting shows. Scripted drives generally have a higher rate of success. So if Chicago can find pay dirt here, might be an opportunity to come in and play a cheaper number on the Philadelphia Eagles if they can get into the end zone. That's going to be the question. Field goal won't adjust you much, but if you can get in and willingly take that negative game script for Philadelphia, it could be a spot to get in on a cheaper number. Hey, if you're ready to boost your bankroll, Bracco's giving new depositors a 50% purchase bonus. Just use promo code VSIN when you sign up. Bracco's lines are live on our VSIN betting splits page, too. Check that out. See where the action's moving before you bet. Turn your bonus into an edge with insight that matters. Go to playbracco.com today and use promo code VSIN. 9 plays, 36 yards, just over 4 minutes and 40 seconds. This current drive and a big 3rd and 7 coming up for Chicago. As we said yesterday, they're all big third downs, brother. But Chicago to see if they can extend this out on a 3rd and long. You would think it's a passing down. It's interesting. So we get a handoff here, and this is going to be pretty close to a first down, if not a first down. I would assume that tells us that Ben Johnson's going to be willing to go for it on a 4th down. Officially ruled short, the Chicago Bears are, and we're keeping the offense out on the field. So a 4th down coming up for Chicago. I'm sorry I paused because it looks like we're going to get a little bit of a timeout here, or are they huddling up? Either way, Adoree Jackson, a little dinged up on the play. His arm is just kind of hanging limp to his side, and he's running off right now. So they're going to substitute him out on this 4th down, but a potential injury to keep an eye on in the secondary for Philly, as Adoree Jackson runs off what looks like either a shoulder or an arm injury right now. All right, Chicago going for it on 4th and 1. Let you know if they get it. We also have a couple of key downs going on between Kansas and Utah, as Utah has a first down, and they're trying to salt this game away with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. A first down should just about do that for the Utes. We'll see if they can get that done. Right now, a lot of hands in the air, though, for Chicago and Philly. A lot of conversations being had. They'll probably measure this, but right now we're being given the signal for a first down from the officials, and Chicago's going to line up to try to get this thing. Again, in the day and age of technology, I know we've done a little bit of this, eagle-eye measure thing, but you got to be able to have a better sense of where this ball is, and we're going to get a stoppage as Nick Sirianni is going to challenge the spot and whether or not Chicago got the first down. I would love to see a rate of success on spot challenges like this. I mean, it's so subjective as to whether or not you're going to get these things. All right, when we come back, hopefully we'll have the result of the challenge for Sirianni. We'll keep our eye on our live football, but we are underway on a Black Friday. Scoreless right now. 9:15 left to go in the first between Chicago and Philly.
If your small business is booming, you might say,
Cha-ching!
but you should say,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
and we'll help your growing business. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Extra value meals are back. For just $5, get a savory and sweet sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddles, plus hash browns and a coffee. Only at McDonald's.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSIN, the Sports Betting Network.
I love to be corrected. I like being presented information. If I'm wrong. Good numbers here from Justin Emery. Was not familiar with these. The spot challenges by NFL coaches, which, by the way, Nick Sirianni gets correct. The challenge is successful. It is a turnover on downs. Eagles are going to start with the ball at about their own 25-yard line. However, on a 2nd and 5, after a 5-yard run from Saquon Barkley, we get a false start. So we'll have a 2nd and 10 coming up. In 2024, 60% was the conversion rate of coaches on these challenges in terms of spots. That was up, though, greatly from 2023. 39.6% was the success rate from coaches on spot challenges in 2023. Likely, potentially, the higher rate of success because of different camera angles for these plays. So, corrected. I am wrong, and I thought they weren't really going to be that successful. Not only was this one successful, they've been wildly successful since the start of last year. All right, 1st and 10, fresh set of downs. That is converted to A.J. Brown. We should note that after a longish drive that kills some clock, the total right now for this matchup, again, we closed at 43.5 between these two. Let's see. Right now, the current number in game, we're looking at 38.5. So we've already seen a pretty good adjustment right now for the in-game total here between Chicago and Philadelphia. Got a little distracted. There's a lot going on. One of the others we should update here, a little trickeration, a nice little play fake from Utah, and a touchdown pass of 48 yards to Larry Simmons for the Utes, and that is going to put them into the end zone and give them, again, a commanding 31-21 lead with 2:07 left to go in the fourth quarter. 2nd and 10 now coming up for Jalen Daniels and the Kansas Jayhawks. So they are trying to stay inside of this number. Again, this closed at 10.5, and Utah trying to get their 10th win and stay alive with some of these weird Big 12 tiebreakers in a race to get to a Big 12 championship game. Likely not going to do that, but you at least give yourself a small probability of getting in if that is the case for the Utes. So 31-21, 2nd and 10 there. We'll keep an eye on whether or not the Jayhawks can stay inside of that number. 3rd and 5 coming up for the Philadelphia Eagles. Disjointed offense kind of continues. We'll see if this is going to be the case, as Chicago is going to see if they can get Philadelphia off the field right now. No real angle. Look, we're pretty early, so the angles and trying to find some of those for these two teams would be few and far between. I would say that potentially, because of a slow, or we'll call it a long drive with some of the clock being killed, you could maybe make a case for this to go over an in-game total that's pretty low with just one drive in the books. Having said that, don't really see a lot of evidence that Philly can support and get you into the end zone with regularity, get you some points if that's going to be the case. 3rd and 5 right now. Hurts is going to get forced out of the pocket trying to find somebody downfield, and he's not going to get it. So the Eagles will punt this ball back to Chicago. Ugly start from a scoring standpoint for these two teams, and that's going to cut that total down a little bit more, down to 37.5 between those two. All right, as we wait for more of this to develop, let's take a look at some of the other games that we're seeing, some of the line moves in the National Football League, some of the other games that are coming up on Sunday. Jacksonville and Tennessee. This one's a pretty interesting one. We saw some spots open at 7. We're down to 6, 6.5, depending on where you look. 6, the predominant number here with a total of 41.5. The hottest ATS team in the National Football League, the Titans, who have covered 4 straight. And this is, too, to go back to the market power ratings that we do every once in a while here, every week, I should say, on this program. One of the things that sticks out is the rise of the Tennessee Titans, finally in the cellar for a really long time. Market didn't really want to budge. Market had bet against them in a couple of spots. They were the lowest power-rated team of the NFL. However, not the case anymore. Now, they are still down there amongst some of the cellar dwellers. Same power rating as the Las Vegas Raiders, just about a point ahead of the Saints and the Jets, your 2 lowest power-rated teams in the NFL right now. But the Titans are finally getting a little bit more respect from the betting market and slowly starting to climb out here. The question now becomes, do you think that 7.5, 8-ish points, is that a big enough difference? Is that too small of a difference between Jacksonville and Tennessee? Because that's exactly what you're getting here if you're looking at the way the market is power rating these two teams. There are a few teams in every single sport that I'm willing to kind of take my pen and draw a line through because I feel like I just cannot get a grasp on what they are week to week. You can power rate them, but it seems that the power rating weekly is fickle for some of these teams. That team, of course, would be Jacksonville. Not a team that I have a very strong read on some of their returns and what I've seen from them every single time they take the field. They can look like a team that is able to go and blow out a team like the Los Angeles Chargers a week after blowing a game to the Houston Texans. They look like a team that scraps with some of the lower power-rated teams that they're perceived to be better than, like the Raiders, who they only beat by a single point, like the Cardinals. They needed overtime and a field goal to take out. So this is a Jags team that I have generally said, I'm out. But it is somewhat telling, as we always talk about where the number's at, where the betting market is at, and where the action goes. It is somewhat telling that the market was not only willing to take this off the few 7s that were out there, but in fact 6 is the number, and we're not potentially going to get to that point either. Los Angeles Rams and the Carolina Panthers. Should also note the line move here for those who haven't been keeping track throughout the week. 9.5 the opener, or as high as 10.5 now, with a total of 45.5 between LA and Carolina. I think you can make potentially the case to lay the number here with the Los Angeles Rams. As much as I like this Carolina team from time to time, and we have called ourselves here on Money Move a pro-Carolina show, you talk about consistency week to week and what you're going to get from a team like Carolina. Similarly to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would bless you if you feel like you can understand what you're going to get almost every single time out for this Carolina squad, following up a week in which he had his best performance as a pro pretty much ever Bryce Young goes out against the San Francisco 49ers, a team that cannot pressure, a team that has played very poorly against opposing quarterbacks, throws 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, 5.8 yards per attempt, and gives you absolutely nothing for the most part offensively against a Rams squad that seems pretty dominant and, to go back to our market power ratings, has now achieved status as the highest power-rated team in the NFL on an island by themselves. I would say that it's hard to make the case to grab 10.5, even given the bloated number, and that would be it. A big run for the Chicago Bears that's going to set them up relatively nicely right about big field. It's Manungai who's going to go over his longest rush of the day. We got a 1st and 10 coming up, but a big scamper there for Manungai, who's going to get his first explosive of the day. 4th and 10, Kansas, and Jalen Daniels sacked, and that is going to do it here. 1:52 left to go in the 4th. Kansas has no timeouts left. Utah should be able to kneel this thing out. Jayhawks should cover this game, barring any ridiculous contest, some ridiculous shenanigans from Utah. This one's going to be in the books, 31-21. Utah's going to escape with a victory in a game in which they were flirting with disaster. That defensive touchdown, 3 interceptions, by the way, for Daniels today, one of them getting returned. That is going to loom large in a game that Kansas probably had potentially there. And going forward, as I kind of digress here, because this is going to be final between these two, going forward, Utah, and we've kind of seen this throughout the year, but these last few games for Utah, when you look at the way they performed defensively, especially against the run, you got to ask some real questions as to what this team is going to do when we get into the postseason, wherever they eventually go. 290 yards for Kansas today, 5.7 yards per attempt. That follows up a performance against Kansas State in which they got absolutely pummeled up front, 472 yards rushing the week prior. So Utah is going to have to really answer some questions about how they've been bullied up front by these last two opponents. It has been a big issue for the Utes. And now, as you head into postseason play, wherever, again, you're going to be with your 10th win, that is going to be something to monitor for the Utes. But they get it done 31-21 here in this game against Kansas. Really quickly, too, some of the other lines, we're going to get to these on the other side. Zach Cohen's going to join us, and after we talk about him, we'll have to talk about some of the best bets for the weekend and what we've added as well for our contest card, because we did have one last night. We decided on that with Stormy and trying to stay alive in the quarter for the Circa Millions. We'll have to talk about Minnesota and Seattle as well, because I would tend to agree with Mike. Coming off of that rough game against Tennessee from a spot situation, whatever you want to call it, standpoint, now coming back home, laying 11.5 against Minnesota's third-string quarterback, this seems to be a contest where they should be able to open up a can on the Minnesota Vikings. Another big run, this one courtesy of DeAndre Swift, and just like that, Chicago Bears are either in the red zone or just on the precipice of getting in. 1st and 10, 4:22 left to go in the first, and this running attack is starting to really find its groove against Philadelphia. It's low scoring right now. There is nothing on the board, but if this continues, Eagles are going to have a tough time here. We talked about their defense being the most consistent part of this team. If they're going to give up gaps and holes like this, it is going to be a long night for the Philadelphia Eagles. Folks, if you want to test your skills, you got to check out the Average Joe contest. Congratulations to John DeFabus, who is our latest Average Joe weekly winner. Every week, you can jump into the contest by making 7 picks, NFL or college, and the top score takes home $500. Win it with an Edge Boost account, and that payout doubles to $1,000. And don't forget, each quarter, one winner gets the ultimate prize, airfare for 2 to Las Vegas, a 2-night stay at Circa Resort and Casino, and an in-studio guest appearance on a VSiN show. It's free to enter anytime at vsin.com/Joe. That is VSIN.com/Joe. 2nd and 10 coming up for Chicago. I don't want to say this to Justin Emery, who's our wonderful producer, but if your Eagles allow this to happen, I'm going to be pretty upset if they let this happen right now. I see a nod of approval from our next guest. It'll be Zach Cohen, who's going to join us on the other side. Talk a little association. It is a big card tonight. Get some best bets and more from Zach when we return here on Money Moves.
Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Oh boy, It's early on, but it's not looking good. Survivor implications, both in the regular and Grandissimo and more. It is a 7-0 lead for the Chicago Bears. What a drive for the boys from the Windy City. Currently with 1:31 left to go in the first, Chicago up on top. Your in-game numbers right now, Bears as a 2.5-point underdog with a touchdown lead. Total up to 41.5. The story so far of this game, the Chicago Bears rushing attack, 8 first downs, 4 of 5 on third downs. They failed to convert their lone fourth down. How are they doing it? 84 yards on the ground, 6.5 yards per carry. A dominant drive capped off by a DeAndre Swift run for 3 yards up the gut for a touchdown. We'll keep our eye on that. We'll see if the Eagles can respond. We head up, though, to Progressive Guest Line and welcome in Zach Cohen. Nice enough to give us some time, senior editor here at vsin.com. Zach, first one with the first holiday with the little one. You had a good one. Did you guys eat well? How was it?
We usually actually don't do a traditional Thanksgiving at my in-laws' house, but they got all the stuff because they know that I like it. So there was a lot of Costco items on the table, but they were all really good, to be honest. So it was a very good meal.
You know, it's funny. I think this is actually the second time you've mentioned this. I think we talked about this last year. The dynamic of you being pro-Thanksgiving, but you are in a family that does not really celebrate it, correct?
Yep. Yeah, they all ate like steak, and I ate like everything else, like all the traditional Thanksgiving food. Like I pretty much ate by myself.
That's a little weird. I'm not pro turkey, but like the stuffing and like macaroni cheese, things of that nature, you got to have it. Have you considered leaving that family? No, I'm just playing. All right. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see. By the way, okay. Sure. You're like, for the record, I have not, if anybody's watching. We should note, too, for this game, we were talking about this during the extra point that the Bears kicked. That wind looks pretty crazy, and we're starting to see it. The goalposts are shaking. Right now on the kickoff, you had to have a holder for the kickoff, so keep that in mind as we move forward in this game. All right. Let's talk a little basketball later tonight. A really good schedule. Very much looking forward to a lot of these. Let's start 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. One of the first tips we're going to have here. Hawks taking on the Cavaliers. Cavs laid about 6.5 on the road with a total of 236.5. I know you got a player prop. Let us know what it is, but also game-wise, just what you make of where the Cavs, what the Cavs are laying here against the Hawks.
Well, game-wise, it's actually really interesting because if you look at our VSiN matchups page, Mackinnon had, I believe, the Hawks minus like 4 or something in this game. Yeah. And you're seeing the Cavs minus 6 or something. So you're getting good value on the Hawks if you are interested in taking, a side in this game. I don't really like it. There are some cup implications, like the Cavaliers can get in with a very convincing win. I think that's why the spread is the way that it is. There's a little bit more incentive for Cleveland to win, and they need to do it by 15-plus points. So I think Orlando right now has a plus 61 point differential, and they're going to be very hard to beat if they end up losing that game tonight. So the Cavaliers need to try to win this game by margin just to have a shot. I took Onyeka Okongwu over 13.5 points at plus 100, so didn't go anywhere near Cleveland in this game. But Okongwu's been scorching hot for the Hawks lately, like from three-point range right now, shooting about 41% from three. Attempts are way up from where we were used to them with him, shooting over 4 threes per game. And then in the month of November, shooting 42% and a half three-point attempts per game. So really, really shooting the three ball well. The Cavaliers this season, just 27th in the league at guarding spot-up opportunities. And I do think that he's going to be like kind of drifting around the perimeter to try to pull Mobley and Allen away from the basket.
You probably don't have data on this, but I would just be curious. Just because you have to win by a certain amount doesn't mean you will win by a certain amount. And I don't think the Hawks would just roll over and willingly acquiesce, considering these two teams might directly be competing for seeds by the time we get to the end of the year. I don't know. Do you think it's somewhat beneficial to maybe play against some of these teams that need these point differential? Because I think the market's over-factoring this into some of these lines. I don't know if the Hawks should be favored by the degree that you mentioned with Mackinnon's numbers, but 6.5 with a relatively clean injury report really does stick out here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that I would have had the Cavaliers still laying like 2.5 in this game, just because it is in Atlanta, and like the Hawks have been pretty good this season. But it is crazy to me that they are favored by 6.5. So I stayed away. Like I do think that it's the type of situation where I think the casual bettors are going to jump on the Hawks just because it is such a big number. I feel like Vegas maybe knows that, the odds makers, but I don't know that I want to touch it myself. Maybe I would take the Hawks like on an alternate spread or something, because I just don't think that the Cavaliers are going to be able to win by enough to get in. So I think that they probably know that as well.
Earlier today on a numbers game, Kelly and Gil asked me what I liked in the NBA. I only had one game. It was the Charlotte Hornets at home against the Chicago Bulls. I will use the phrase we've used often, both talking basketball and a couple of times when it comes to football. If not now, when, Zach? Brandon Miller is back. This team laid an egg the other day against the New York Knicks after a kind of feisty start. But if the Hornets, and this is the way I described it to Gil and Kelly, if they're going to be what I expected them to be with a clean injury report, tonight would be the night against Chicago.
Yeah, I think this is a really good spot for Charlotte. You just mentioned they got absolutely killed by New York last game. Usually you see teams bounce back from that unless they are, very much disconnected. I don't think that that's the case with this young Hornets team. I think that this team is still trying to get better, doing a lot of the right things on the court. And I do think that this is a really strong matchup for them because Charlotte is a top 5 team in the league. When you look at rebound rate this season, they've been doing a really good job on the glass. The Bulls have actually been really bad under Billy Donovan since he took over there against teams that out-rebound opponents by 3 or more. I believe 22-44 is the number straight up against those teams. So a really, really strong trend going against Chicago in this game. And also the Bulls have a lot of guys on the injury report. The Isaac Okoro is doubtful. And then you have Vooch, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, and then one, I think maybe Kevin Herter, all listed as questionable. And I think if you lose any combination of like 2 or 3 of those players, you're talking about a Bulls team that no longer really has the talent advantage over the Hornets, if they even do to begin with. I think that Charlotte has a really, really strong perimeter group with Knipple, Ball, and Miller, like you just mentioned. And they just need to lock in defensively a little bit. And I think that they will at home because of what happened in that last game.
Since November 16th, who would you say is the hottest guard in the NBA?
Oh, God. Is it James Harden?
I was calling Gillespie. I was setting you up. What are we doing here? This guy's been on fire. He's coming off a 21-point performance against the Kings. My man scored 20 twice in the last 4 games. He's been great.
I thought for sure you were setting me up for something Harden related. I didn't know what it was, but yeah, I have Colin Gillespie over 12.5 points against the Thunder tonight. I noted on Harvard Handicappers this morning, also in my write-ups, not the greatest matchup in the world. The Thunder have so much strength, so much length, and physicality on the perimeter. Gillespie is a smaller guard. He can be pushed around a little bit, but he's just shooting so unbelievably well from 3-point range and attempting 6+ threes per game. No Jalen Green, no Grayson Allen again tonight. So his role is going to be very big in this offense until those 2 guys are back. And they actually did move him into the starting 5 last game against Sacramento. He responded with a really good performance, but just continually going over this number and not even really getting close. He's at 15 plus in the last 6 games, 19 plus in 3 of the last 6. I think he finds a way to keep it going tonight. I noted it in the article, but some smaller guards actually have found their way to some success in this matchup with Keontae George, Malik Monk, Dennis Schroeder, Jeremiah Fears. All of those guys kind of got going against this defense.
Yep, and looking forward to what they have in store here for Oklahoma City. The Suns, as you have mentioned many times in this program, pretty scrappy group that even in spots like this where they're catching 14.5, they'll put up a pretty good fight, I think. So really looking forward to seeing this. Let's go to the Spurs. Really good performance and victory for the Spurs on the road against Portland the other night. That was Wednesday. Devin Vassell was one of the big performers there. 23 points, 9 of 17 from the floor. Are we going back to the well with Devin tonight?
Yeah, I like Vassell over 15.5 points. You just mentioned it. He had 23 last game, had 17 the game before that, so averaging 20 points per game over the last 2. And it is pretty significant that, the Nuggets are going to be without Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon because both of those guys spend a lot of time guarding the perimeter. So I think that Vassell is going to have really favorable matchups in this game. And it is another game with no Wemby, no Castle. So the Spurs are going to need some offense from somewhere. And I think Vassell is going to knock down a couple of threes in this game, but also Denver's 27th in the league at guarding long mid-range 2s. I noted it on the podcast. Those are not shots you really want your players to be taking, but Vassell takes a good amount of them. He does make a good amount of them. So I think he's actually going to be right in his wheelhouse facing this defense.
Zooming out, I know you got one more. People can go check out the website, vsin.com, for some of the plays as well, and Harvard Handicappers. What'd you make of Harper coming back for the Spurs? Only 17 minutes, but still 7 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. I was kind of surprised by the minutes restriction. Is that what we're going to see from him moving forward for a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think this team is going to be very careful with all injuries moving forward. I mean, you hear it when you listen to some of the big podcasts of guys that break news, not the guys like us that just follow the league, but they keep saying that San Antonio, while they are good this season, they're taking a very long-term view with Wembanyama and this young core. So I think anytime you see an injury, you should always assume that they're going to play it very, very safe.
All right. Let's see. That's it. All right, Zach, we appreciate it. We're up against it. We want people to go check out your content, too. So go to vsin.com, check out the article. Hardwood Handicappers, the podcast as well. Make sure you listen every single day because it's up every single day, save for Thanksgiving. There was no contests. Zach, appreciate it, dude. Have a happy Thanksgiving, happy holiday, and we'll talk again next week.
Yeah, my biggest play, actually, we did not talk about. So Hardwood Handicappers or vsin.com, that's a good tease for everyone to go look at it.
There you go. Check it out now. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it, buddy. All right, coming up, we'll give you an update. Philadelphia on the board, 13:04 left to go in the second. It is 7-3. We'll tell you how the drive went, what we're looking forward, and what we're looking forward to on the weekend with our best bets.
If your small business is booming, you might say,
Cha-ching!
but you should say,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
and we'll help your growing business. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Extra value meals are back. For just $5, get a savory and sweet sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddles, plus hash browns and a coffee. Only at McDonald's.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Coming up in 10 minutes, Follow the Money. Mitch and Paul are back at the desk. They'll get you set. We'll tell you who they got coming up in a little bit. But the boys are excited to be back on a Black Friday. And remember, too, if you like me or if you like Stormy Bonatoni or Mitch and Paul, we are your Sunday morning programming, so keep that in mind. We are going to start our day at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Mitch and Paul will have you all the way up until 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, where Stormy and I will have you for Countdown to Kickoff, leading you up to, of all things, kickoff of the early morning games on Sunday. So make sure you join us. And that Countdown to Kickoff hour always on SiriusXM Mad Dog Sports Radio. So a lot of fun to do that. Make sure you're part of the fun on those Sundays getting ready for the NFL. Speaking of the National Football League, quite the update we have here. So Philadelphia can't get into the end zone. They kick they kick a field goal to go up 7-3. The Bears now all of a sudden, once again, and this is kind of the early theme going here, running the ball really well. Now we have a 3rd and 7, so we'll see if they can extend this drive. But quite a few big runs for the Chicago Bears, and this is going to be a completion and a first down. So now 1st and 10, right at about the Bears' 45-yard line. Chicago continues to move this ball. After that conversion, 9 first downs, 5 of 6 on 3rd down so far, 149 yards, 5.7 yards per play. They are, at least to this point, statistically beating up on Philadelphia. Eagles do have the per-play edge right now, 5.8 to 5.7, but obviously not really that big of a deal. And the Bears continue to show out on the ground. This one, courtesy of an end around, they're going to get a first down or very close to it. If not, it's going to be about a 2nd and 9. So 7-3, 10:45 left to go and more for the for the Chicago Bears. Current in-game numbers for you, because obviously we're tracking this from an in-game standpoint for Philly and Chicago. Total had dipped down relatively low. We're splitting around 40.5 right now, and Philly holding on to the ever so slight 2.5-point spread in their favor. Moneyline minus 145, plus 114 coming back on the other side. As we wait for action to develop here and Chicago to see what they're going to do off of play action, big play downfield, it's going to hit the hands of his receiver. That would be, of course, Caleb Williams. That's going to fall incomplete. 3rd and 1 coming up. Let's get to best bets. Recap of yesterday on Thanksgiving. Bengals saved the day for me. What would have been a bleak day. Bengals +7. And a money line play at plus 260. Get it done here. So good day there. Christian Watson gets over his 57.5 receiving yards. I will say, first touchdown was never going to come close, not going to get that. But Watson deserved to have a 100-yard day, was targeted a million times, could not hold on to a football to save his life at a bunch of these. But either way, we get over 57.5 receiving yards, 3 plays there. But Watson, 100-plus receiving yards at plus 360, first touchdown at 11-1, and then Jahmyr Gibbs under 17.5 on the longest rush. All losses there for the day. Very slight profit considering the plus 260 cash there. There was only a half unit play anyway for the Bengals on the money line. for the weekend in the National Football League. Side note, Bears convert on the 3rd and 1. Let's take a look at what we've got going into the weekend. It is a short card, but it is a card nonetheless. Texans plus 4.5. This was added early in the week on Money Moves. We've talked about this at length. I think this was Tuesday or Wednesday in which we discussed it. Part of the logic is actually what we got, which was, hey, are you just going to snag 4.5 only because you know that Stroud's going to come back and we're probably going to get a little bit of a bump toward the Houston Texans. Got a little lucky as well considering the released fibula injury to Daniel Jones. But I brought this up to Gil and Kelly, and I think it's worth noting. The Colts offensive line has performed relatively well, although Daniel Jones is still around the top 10 in terms of total dropbacks under pressure. He's just handled pressure very, very well so far this year. Having said that, with this issue going on with his leg, showing a lack of mobility in all the footage we have seen at practice and what we saw a little bit in the Chiefs game, I think that pressure is going to be able to get there. It's already going to be able to get there with a 4-man rush. Now, with a quarterback that's on 1.5 legs, I think that's going to be a problem. I think the Texans are good enough defensively, plus 4.5 here. Don't hate that Stroud's back at all. I'm not going to go with the dynamic of Davis Mills being better. If this offensive line can continue to at least give these quarterbacks a chance, the Texans defense is definitely going to do just that. Thought 4.5 was a little strong. I think these divisional games, too, you probably show a little bit more of a bump there as well. So give me the Texans plus 4.5 in this matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. Saints catching 6 against the Miami Dolphins. We talked about this at length earlier in the program. The fact that the market is just all over the place with the Saints power rating, where they've been, what they were last week compared to where they're at this week. I just think we're kind of we're just not clear on where this Saints team should be. I think this number should be a little bit lower. I was expecting more like 4.5 or 4, so I'll take 6 here with the New Orleans Saints against the Miami Dolphins. We're starting to head in that direction as well, but I do think New Orleans catching 6 points against Miami, the side here playing against a little bit of what I deem to be a market overreaction after just last week. The market was screaming to you that the Saints were better than the Atlanta Falcons by about a point. Here now we have them in a very weird spot, being rated much lower than not only Atlanta, but obviously a Miami squad that on a neutral, according to this number, would be about 4.5 points better. Raiders plus 10. We've talked about this at length as well. We'll go to the well here with the bad team. I have been very critical of the Raiders. Pete Carroll and his sons running the operation potentially into the ground. Lots of noise around it. But that's a big number for Las Vegas. Maybe you get the fired coordinator bump. Who knows? A lot of good numbers, by the way, about this new regime, if you will, on the offensive staff, and the fact that Greg Olsen does like to target his tight ends a ton when you look at the way that his offense operates. We'll have more on this on Sunday, but maybe worth looking at, of course, Brock Bowers and others when you look at the way the tight ends are used in Olsen's offense. But Raiders plus 10, those are the 3 sides, at least in the NFL. 2 teasers as well. Packers plus 8.5 was a teaser we entered earlier in the week. 1 leg down. Eagles minus 1. Part of that, so we'll sweat that out here a little bit, as well as, again, Eagles minus 1 and Patriots minus 1. We got news today that the Patriots will face on Monday Night Football Jackson Dart. He will start that game as he is back from concussion protocol. So that's the NFL card heading into the weekend. By the time we get to Sunday's Countdown to Kickoff show, maybe have a couple more ads for you there. But those 5 plays in pocket, and hopefully one of those will be cashed by the time we get to the end of the day today. Did not send this to you, Justin, but do have one in the NBA as well. We'll take 3 with the Charlotte Hornets. Discussed this with our guys. Mitch is going to come in here in a little bit. But Kelly and Gil on a numbers game. Do like Charlotte plus the points. Talked about that with Zach Cohen as well about 10 minutes ago. If you missed any part of that conversation, go to VSiN.com or wherever you get your podcasts and see what Zach had to say about the play. But long injury report for Chicago and a Hornets team that is relatively healthy with the 2 pillars out there in Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. Took a shot with them against New York, didn't get there. We're going to take one more shot against a more winnable opponent, the Chicago Bulls. Speaking of the Chicago Bears, though, let's go here. An underthrown pass for Caleb Williams that might loom large, not even pressured here, but just can't get enough underneath it. That is a very clear and obvious touchdown left on the field. So 3rd and 10 coming up. They are right about the Philadelphia 12-yard line or so. So that thing's going to hang over this if you can't end up cashing in, and you're not going to be able to do it. 4th and 10 coming up. Pass tipped at the line of scrimmage. That was weird. Did he lose his footing on that throw? As he completely underthrew that to the corner of the end zone. Would have been a touchdown. A wide open receiver. And instead, the Eagles are going to get a little lucky here and force Chicago to settle for a field goal attempt. So 7-3, we'll let you know what the field goal attempt is, whether it's good or not. But if the Eagles can pull this off, they're going to be very lucky that was not found because the Chicago Bears probably kicking themselves for a missed opportunity. With that, waiting for the extra point. Current number before the kick, 1.5-point spread in favor of Philly with a total of 40.5. So that'll be a one-possession game still maintaining after this kick attempt, which we are waiting to see whether or not they will do. I don't know what we're waiting for here at this point. Clock ran out. Oh, there was a ball issue. All right. So with that, 4th and 10, we'll let you know. By the way, we're underway in the American 2. A big one here, especially when it comes to the chase for a college football playoff berth. North Texas finds themselves in the American Championship game with a win here over Temple. They are currently up 7-0 in the early going of the first quarter with about 8 minutes left to go. 30-yard field goal attempt is up, and it is good. Chicago takes a 10-7 lead, 1.5-point spread with a total of 40.5. All right, that'll do it for us here. Last couple of notes, too. Really looking forward to a couple of these college games. We'll have plenty of coverage on that on our Saturday programming, and, of course, Bishop Paul taking you into the weekend. But San Diego State and New Mexico, one game that is underway right now. We'll be sweating that out. Didn't get that off in our best bets, but we do have a show bet on this one, too, with myself supporting the New Mexico Lobos. They have an early 3-0 lead over San Diego State, and Georgia Tech underway right now. Early on, that is scoreless, 1st and 10 for Georgia at their own 12-yard line. Coming up in about 4 hours, or 3 hours actually now, Texas A&M and Texas. Current numbers, Texas A&M about a 2.5-point favorite with a total of 52.5. Stay tuned to VSiN. Following us here on Money Moves, follow the money. Mitch Moss, Paulie Howard, back at it at 4 p.m. Eastern. Today's show, Chuck Edel is going to have his best college football and NFL bets for the upcoming weekend, followed by the Circa Friday Football Invitational, 7 p.m. Eastern. Looking forward to seeing what the contestants have in store for us coming up a little bit later tonight. And then stick around, Sports Gambling Podcast with Sean Green and Ryan Kramer at 10 p.m. Eastern. We'll have you from there. We'll be back with Countdown to Kickoff with myself, Stormy Buonantony, at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern on Sunday, leading into those kickoffs for the NFL window. So we enjoyed it. Hope your holiday was absolutely fantastic. Follow the money coming at you next year on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Llegó Black Friday a The Home Depot, o sea que ya es hora de dejar tu casa lista para todas las fiestas que se vienen. Hoy mismo puedes escoger entre nuestra gran variedad de arbolitos preiluminados por menos de $99 y gracias a su sistema de conexión rápida y armado fácil, podrás pasar más tiempo disfrutando de la temporada. Encuentra todo lo que necesitas para llenar tu casa de espíritu navideño en la tienda o por internet. No te pierdas Black Friday en The Home Depot.
If your small business is booming and ready to expand, you might say something like,
It's happening.
Booyah!
Yeah.
Crushed it.
but if you need someone who can actually help protect your growing business, just say,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
and just like that, your State Farm agent can help you get the coverage you need for your new space. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.